Hey guys, what is up? It is me, Pagey, here once again with another video on the Flash TV, television, show, series, whichever way you want to put it. So with the Flash wrapping up a 9-season run fairly recently, we know there was a bunch of time travel on the show, some of which is, fairly innocent and not really much of an impact on the timeline at all. But some of it, it's pretty impactful for the better and most times for the worse. And in this video, we are going to go over every timeline that we visited in the Flash TV series and the changes that came from it and also what caused it. And I guess, a bit of a spoiler, most of it is Barry related. Maybe not specifically by Barry, but at least related to him. But I'm pretty sure I got all the timelines, though I have this weird paranoid type of feeling that I may have missed one or two. Hopefully, at the very least, it isn't a big one that I've missed. But if you have anything to add, whether it's a timeline I did miss or just your opinion on the changes and, which timeline was your favorite and which timeline you wish we explored more. I think there's one specific one, or actually there's probably two that I think most people would have wanted to spend more time with. But yeah, let me know any of that stuff in the comment section down below. Always interested to read it. Now, I am going to try and go in order of when we visit them, or at the very least, how they play into each other. That's probably the best way to put it. So, yeah. So the first one is the obvious one, and that's the original timeline. So this is, of course, the timeline where Barry, doesn't become the Flash until 2020, and he vanishes in Crisis in 2024. He's only the Flash for 4 years before he disappears and apparently doesn't come back. Of course, Nora Allen does not die in this timeline when Barry is a child. So, it's a timeline that a lot of people wish we explored more. Though, to be honest, it would have been a very brief time period to explore, seeing it was only a 4-year run for the Flash in this timeline. But he was an older Flash, so he was a bit more mature when he became the Flash. So, I guess he would have been a bit more quick to develop, I guess you could say. But yeah, this is definitely one that I see a lot of people want to talk about and want to visit more. Of course, then we go into the new, main timeline, if you want to put it. This is kickstarted when Reverse Flash travels back, where Barry is hit by lightning in 2013 rather than 2020, and he is taken in by a stranded Eobard Thawne, posing as Harrison Wells, because he needs to train Barry up so he can get his speed back and go back to his future home as quick as possible. So this includes building a team around Barry, Team Flash, as is more commonly known. This including Caitlin Snow and Cisco Ramon, who previously, from what we know in the original timeline, were not connected to Barry at all. The next timeline we visit is actually our first case of seeing Barry time travel, and this was in the season 1 episode called Out of Time, and this is when Barry accidentally time travels whilst trying to stop Weather Wizard's tsunami attack, this undoing Cisco's death in the same episode at the hands of Eobard Thawne. Now, this was a pretty big episode because this was Barry accidentally doing it, so it was obviously going to take some time for him to learn how to do it properly. But this also plays off into one, I wasn't too sure if I included a timeline thing or just an instance of time travel, but I thought I would include it. And that was obviously in the season 1 finale when Barry goes back, he's going to, stop Reverse Flash from, killing his mum, everything like that, and potentially cause something else that we'll talk about later. But then he comes back to the future or the present day without doing it. And instead, Eddie Thawne ends up dying. So this might shift the timeline a bit, but it wasn't a timeline change due to time travel. And we weren't too sure exactly if it sprung off into a completely new timeline either. So I didn't really want to include it, but I guess it's a bit of a minor mention. And that technically goes for the next one I want to talk about, and that was the Vandal Savage time jump. That's what I'm going to call it. And that was in the season 2 crossover that we got between Arrow and Flash, which also was like a backdoor pilot of sorts for Legends of Tomorrow. And this is when Vandal Savage pretty much blows everyone up with these big staff thing, and everyone dies due to a poor plan. Barry time traveling back, I think it was about a day or so before this instance happens to ensure they don't die with a better plan. So this was another instance of that, and of course, it completely changes what happens, so it's a new timeline, but it's a much better timeline because, everyone died from that big staff thing, so not much of a timeline to live in previously, so definitely the better one to be in right now. Now, one of the first big instances of time travel changing an event that we've seen take place on the show took place in season 2, episode 17, in the episode called Flashback, where Barry time travels back to the events of season 1 to get some help with Zoom from Eobard Thawne, who of course isn't around anymore. Now, when Barry comes back to the present day, he's followed by Time Wraiths, which we're introduced to in the episode, but they're actually taken down right at the end of the episode by Pied Piper, or Hartley Rathaway, who had been in the flashback sequences in that episode when he went back to the season 1 timeline. Obviously this making Pied Piper an ally, or Harley Rathaway an ally rather than an enemy, which they didn't get to explore more really after this point. Really, next time we see him, for the most part, they've sort of changed this. But this is one of the big cases, or the first cases, of them changing the timeline with the time travel stuff, at least from Barry's point of view. So this is probably a big moment, though most people don't refer back to it that much. But the next one is probably the biggest case of it, at least in regards to Barry specifically, and that a lot of people, refer to, and that was Flashpoint. So this is a timeline with no Flash. Barry's still got his powers in this timeline, but they are slowly wearing away. But the main speedster is Kid Flash, or Wally West. This is a big reveal for him on the show. With a character, known as the Rival, him being sort of like the reverse Flash of this timeline. Now, of course, like the original timeline, the Flashpoint timeline is one of the areas that people want to spend more time in. A lot of people saying that it should have been like the entire first half of season 3 and stuff like that, which I don't necessarily agree with. I think it should have been like 4 or 5 episodes, but definitely should have been more than just the one episode we got. But yeah, a lot of people wanted to spend more time in the Flashpoint timeline, see any other changes that were there. One of the other ones that was there was that there was Ramon Industries rather than Star Labs, with Cisco being this like douchey sort of like tech billionaire sort of thing. So yeah, the Flashpoint timeline was a massive change, though it does get undone when Barry allows Eobard Thawne to go kill his mother again to restore things. Or at least try and restore things to how they were. And this leads into the new timeline, post-Flashpoint timeline, where, it's definitely more normal, or at least looks more like what we saw in Season 2 and Season 1, though there are some changes. Some of the big ones being that Killer Frost's alter ego in Caitlin is definitely there now. Julian Albert, who is, also Dr. Alchemy as well, is Barry's co-worker now, and they've been together for a bit. Cisco's brother is dead. Sarah Diggle, Diggle's daughter, becomes John Diggle Jr., his son. And the Cult of Savitar is created as well. There's quite a few changes from post-Flashpoint, though it's probably a better timeline to be in than the Flashpoint one, because that was sort of collapsing on itself anyway. So probably Barry made the right decision anyway. Now, the next one I have is like a new timeline, I guess, but a future version of it, and that's the future of the timeline where Iris is killed by Savitar, which is, of course, where we see the emo Barry that a lot of people call him, or the future Flash. And this is where like Killer Frost is fully formed, taken over, is like this full-on villain. She also destroys both of Cisco's hands when she freezes them, and they sort of crumble off in a very disgusting manner. Barry's sheltered off from everyone else after the death of Iris. Wally is like completely destroyed by Savitar, wheelchair bound, speaking, everything like that. Bleak timeline, you wouldn't want to be there. Everyone looks depressed, no one's smiling, no one's happy. I mean, even Joe's upset. So like that's when you're in a bad timeline, when Joe's just constantly upset. That's not good. And the other timeline associated with this is the Iris surviving timeline, and where H.R. Wells dies. This, of course, ending the Savitar loop, which changes things going forward and avoids us dealing with that future timeline where everyone was depressed. So yeah, we avoid that. The next one is a minor one, which a lot of people don't really refer back to too much, and that's that Cicada is Orlin Dwyer, that timeline. And this is rather than David Hirsch like he should be, and that Nora, Barry's daughter, says, hold on, this guy's meant to be David Hirsch, why is it not him? So this was another timeline change which completely caught people off guard, and also flowed into what was happening in the future as well, and Reverse Flash and how he was using Nora. So this was another timeline change, or at least it played off differently than what was meant to be happening. So yeah, we didn't get David Hirsch, but instead we got Orlin Dwyer and that weird voice he used. Another minor one that I did want to mention was the episode where Nora does the 52 time jumps, and just posts that because the timeline would have been affected in some way with all those little time jumps she was doing. Sure, she wasn't going back in a ridiculous amount of time each time she did it, but she was still doing it and affecting the timeline. So I thought I'd just mention that briefly. But probably the biggest change of them all is a pretty big one, as you would think, and that's the post-crisis timeline, or Earth Prime, whichever way I want to put it. This connecting Supergirl and Black Lightning's Earths to the Earth of Flash, Green Arrow, Batwoman, and the Legends of Tomorrow. This was changes throughout, including who was still alive or dead, or who holds a certain villainous mantle. In regards to, Arrow in that show, we saw that Emiko Queen, Moira Queen, Tommy, Merlin, they were all alive again, thanks to what Oliver did as a Spectre and recreating the multiverse, and specifically Earth Prime and everything that happened there. And then, of course, on The Flash, we saw it undo some changes, like a change we saw earlier with Harley Rathaway, or Pied Piper. He was an ally of Team Flashback in season 2 after a timeline change there. But in the post-crisis one, back in that season 1 episode, well, there's more drama and Harley becomes even more of a villain towards Team Flash and Barry specifically. So yeah, some good changes, but also some bad changes with the post-crisis timeline. And the final change or different timeline we had was, of course, at the beginning of season 8, and that was Reverse Flashpoint, or Armageddon as most people would refer to it as, with Joe being dead. Eobard makes himself the Flash and Barry's the Reverse Flash, pretty much living Barry's life and triggering Barry in multiple different ways. So this is a big change there. Of course, we went in this timeline for too long, pretty much just one episode, or 90% of an episode. So yeah, not too much time spent here, but it was definitely a different timeline. And the final timeline is the one we finished the show on. A pretty simple one. It's the final one that we end the show on. Nothing different there. It's pretty much just little, things fixed up from Armageddon, like Joe not being dead and Barry being the Flash now. So yeah, that's pretty much the final timeline we end on. Could there have been more that we explored? Yeah, probably, because you'll notice, especially once we get over halfway through this video, there's not a lot of instances from season 6, 7, 8, 9, because Barry didn't really time travel because he knew the risks and the dangers of it. So it made sense that we didn't get too many timeline changes from there on. But yeah, guys, thanks for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, it'd be awesome. You could drop a like and show support. Let me know in the comment section down below. Did I miss out on any timelines? I feel like I might have, but I feel like I didn't at the same time, but I'm still a bit worried I did. So if I did, let me know in the comment section down below. And also let me know which of these timelines was your favorite and which one do you wish we spent more time in. As I said, I think there's 2 obvious ones that people will write down. But maybe you have to choose which one. Do you want original timeline or Flashpoint timeline? Let me know which one you would have wanted to spend more time on. And yeah, let me know your thoughts down there. And of course, if you are new to the channel, make sure to subscribe. And I'll catch you guys later. Goodbye.